Today is Wednesday, October 16th. What to know about a new ultimatum the U.S. gave Israel: allow more humanitarian aid into Gaza or risk losing American military aid. And what hurricane victims are being told to do now that one disaster fund is out of money. Also, what a judge in a key battleground state decided about 2 election-related cases. Plus, we'll explain the new rules affecting Medicare recipients, why Walgreens is closing over 1,000 stores nationwide, and all about Apple's newest iPad mini. Those stories and even more news coming up. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. The U.S. government has apparently told Israeli leaders Israel must take steps within 30 days to allow more humanitarian aid into Gaza or face consequences. The Biden administration has not detailed what those consequences might be, but Axios reports it got a copy of the letter sent about this. It was signed by U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, and it told Israel it would risk the supply of U.S. weapons being sent over if it doesn't comply. Israel is dependent on U.S. military aid during this Middle East conflict. U.S. and United Nations officials have warned in recent weeks that conditions continue to get worse in Gaza, and there are very low levels of aid being allowed in. The State Department says the level of humanitarian assistance has fallen by over 50% from where it was at its peak, adding that the 30-day deadline is an appropriate amount of time for Israel to implement changes. Reports say a similar letter was sent back in April, and Israel did in fact increase the aid deliveries allowed in, though it was apparently not maintained. Still, some are noting the 30-day deadline is after Election Day on November 5th, when it might be easier for President Biden to take harsher action against Israel than he has so far. Under U.S. law, countries getting U.S. military aid who are in active military conflict must allow the transfer of U.S.-supported humanitarian aid. An Israeli official said the letter was received and is being reviewed. To be continued. A judge in the key battleground state of Georgia has ruled on 2 election-related cases. First, he said county election officials must certify election results by the legal deadline and not delay or decline certification, even if they suspect fraud or mistakes. The judge clarified that local election officials do have the right to investigate any concerns and should report any evidence of an issue to their local district attorney, but that ultimately concerns about the vote count are for prosecutors and state election officials. Meanwhile, the same judge blocked a new rule from Georgia's election board that would have required counties to count ballots by hand on Election Day. Critics have worried it would cause unnecessary delays and disruptions reporting results. But the judge's decision to keep the new rule from going into effect was really based on timing, saying this new rule would be implemented just 2 weeks before Election Day, which is last minute and would cause administrative chaos. It's another win for Democrats, for now at least. It's likely to be appealed, and the judge is still considering whether to allow this rule for future elections. By the way, these rulings came down as early voting got underway in Georgia yesterday. In fact, Georgia voters shattered a first-day record for early voting, more than doubling what the state saw on day 1 in 2020. A key federal program that offers disaster loans to businesses and homeowners is now out of money. Of course, it comes after back-to-back hurricanes in a matter of weeks. President Biden said in a statement the Small Business Administration's disaster loan program has been exhausted, but is a, quote, critical lifeline to small businesses, homeowners, and renters affected by disasters. So now it's up to Congress to address the situation. Biden said leaders from both parties have promised to replenish money for that fund and other disaster programs. And so Americans are encouraged to continue applying for the loans they need so they can get assistance as soon as possible. But until lawmakers take action, the Small Business Administration will pause new offers for the much-needed relief. To be clear, the SBA's fund that we're talking about is different than FEMA's disaster relief fund. That's more for individual assistance. FEMA's fund is not depleted at this point. Reports say it still has $8.5 billion, and FEMA says it's continuing its response and recovery efforts after both recent hurricanes. A quick update for you about the shortage of IV fluids we told you about earlier this month that was caused by Hurricane Helene. The Biden administration has now invoked wartime powers to try to help the situation. Remember, a factory in North Carolina that produces 60% of all IV fluids used in hospitals around the U.S. was flooded, severely affecting operations. Several hospitals have since taken drastic measures to conserve IV bags. Reports say some surgeries have been canceled because of it. And the American Hospital Association had called for the White House to invoke national emergency powers to ease the crisis. So now it seems that has happened. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has now invoked the Defense Production Act to give the affected manufacturer in North Carolina priority access to the materials needed to clean up and rebuild its factory, among other things. The FDA has also declared multiple shortages and said it would allow products from outside the U.S. to help alleviate the shortfall. And other U.S. manufacturers are ramping up production now. So far, these actions have helped, but the shortage is not over yet. We have more news for you still coming up, but first, thanks to our sponsor. It's almost that time of year where your health insurance plan is going to be top of mind. The open enrollment period is when you'll be signing up for next year's coverage. And whether you're switching plans or not, you may need to look for a new doctor or specialist. And when I need to do that, I try to make the process as easy as possible for myself. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality, in-network doctors, choose the right one for your needs, and click to instantly book an appointment. We're talking about in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, eye care to skin care, and much more. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance, who are located nearby, who are a good fit for any medical need you may have, and who are highly rated by verified patients. Plus, ZocDoc appointments happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/newsworthy to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/newsworthy. ZocDoc.com/newsworthy. Okay, now back to the news. Well, heads up, especially for new parents, whooping cough cases have been on the rise this fall. The CDC says there were 5 times as many cases of what's officially called pertussis at the end of September compared to the same time last year. Part of the reason is that the country is going through a return to pre-pandemic levels of common illnesses. But also, many people fell behind on regular vaccines during the pandemic. So even now, the whooping cough numbers are a bit higher than they were in 2019. It can be hard to identify the illness early on because the symptoms are similar to those of a cold at first. But whooping cough can last for weeks or months with severe extended coughing fits that can make it difficult to breathe. Doctors say the best way to avoid whooping cough is by getting vaccinated. It's important for pregnant women specifically to offer some protection to infants who are especially vulnerable, and they can't get the vaccine until they're at least 2 months old. Open enrollment for Medicare started this week, and industry experts say customers will see bigger changes to available plans than in years past. Medicare is federal health insurance for anyone 65 and older and some younger people with certain conditions or disabilities. And people who are enrolled in Medicare Advantage plans, which use private insurers to provide Medicare benefits, have to be especially vigilant this time. Almost 2 million people on those plans will see their specific coverage eliminated, forcing them to pick a new plan. These changes come mostly because of new federal regulations to make sure people don't need to spend too much out of pocket. There's now an annual cap of $2,000 on how much a person pays for prescriptions. And that means those private insurers who provide Medicare benefits are trying to find new ways to turn profits, which requires changes in plans. So, for example, some major insurers like Aetna and Humana are getting rid of 10% of their Medicare Advantage plans. All that said, the Center for Medicare said average monthly premiums will go down next year, and those eligible for Medicare still have plenty of options. Healthcare experts say the kind of coverage you need depends on your financial situation and health conditions. They urge people to focus on researching the dozens of available plans to find one that suits their needs, this year more than ever. One of the country's biggest drugstore chains is closing more than 1,000 stores. Walgreens will shut down 1,200 locations nationwide, almost 15% of the chain's 8,700 stores. The stores will close over the next 3 years, though the company said as many as 500 of them could shutter next year. It's part of a major turnaround effort at the drugstore chain that includes a $1 billion cost-cutting spree. Walgreens and other pharmacy chains like CVS have been facing more competition from places like Amazon, Walmart, and Costco. Plus, reimbursement rates for prescriptions have gone down. And Walgreens made a multi-billion-dollar investment into a primary care provider, which has impacted its bottom line. A fairly new CEO said they'll try to rehire workers from the closing stores to other locations, and that this turnaround will take time. Apple just unveiled a device designed specifically to work with the company's AI technology. The new iPad mini is faster and more powerful than the previous version, which came out in 2021. Unlike many Apple products, though, the iPad mini did not get a big announcement at a launch event. It just had a press release reflecting the modest updates to the device. Most of the new iPad mini features are improvements in speed and storage, which are especially important for compatibility with the company's AI software called Apple Intelligence. And that will also appear in new iPhones eventually. And artists will be happy to hear you can use the Apple Pencil Pro on the iPad mini. You can pre-order the latest iPad mini now. It starts at $499, and it goes on sale in stores next Wednesday. The NFL has officially chosen a location for Super Bowl 62, and it's Atlanta. The city's Mercedes-Benz Stadium will host the league's championship game in 2028, though a specific date hasn't been set yet. The stadium is the usual home of football's Atlanta Hawks and Major League Soccer's Atlanta United. It will be Atlanta's fourth time hosting the big game, and the first since 2019. The league likes to announce the location of its marquee game years in advance so that host cities have time to prepare for the crush of tourists and fans that come in for a Super Bowl. But before Atlanta in 2028, this season's Super Bowl will happen February 9th, 2025 at the Caesars Superdome in New Orleans. Then it's happening at the 49ers home field in Santa Clara, California in 2026, followed by Los Angeles at the home of the Rams and Chargers in 2027. Well, that's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Work Wednesday, when we break down one interesting career or work-related news story every Wednesday. But first, a quick break. Before my kiddo started preschool, I wanted to start giving him a vitamin to help support his immunity, energy, brain function, mood, his developing body, and more. And after doing a lot of my own research, I chose Hiya. And to be clear, I chose Hiya even before I knew they would sponsor this podcast. More than a year later, I continue to love how Hiya is formulated with the help of nutritional experts and is pressed with a blend of 12 organic fruits and veggies, then supercharged with 15 essential vitamins and minerals. And what was important to me was that the vitamin was not just a bunch of sugar, because some children's vitamins out there are basically candy in disguise. Instead, Hiya is made with zero sugar and zero gummy junk. And yet, my 3-year-old loves taking his Hiya children's vitamin and kids probiotic each morning. We've worked out a special deal with Hiya for their best-selling children's vitamin. Receive 50% off your first order. To claim this deal, you must go to hiyahealth.com/newsworthy. This deal is not available on their regular website. So go to hiyahealth, hiyahealth.com/newsworthy and get your kids the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults. Okay, now back to Work Wednesday. So, a new survey found bullying at work among lawyers is a problem. The survey in Illinois actually found 1 in 4 lawyers there experienced bullying at work in the past year. And that rate is even higher among women, minorities, those who identify as LGBTQ+, and younger lawyers. Most of the reported bullying includes verbal abuse, things like shouting, insults, and other forms of intimidation. But in some cases, the incidents escalated to physical contact. Researchers say it's problematic in the legal community because some see so-called hazing as a necessary part of working their way up the ladder. But for others, it's enough to make them leave the profession completely. The study recommends additional workplace conduct training and enforcement for lawyers, even starting at the law school level. It also says workplaces should adopt legally binding policies to prevent bullying. All right, thank you so much for listening today. We'll catch you up on more news to know tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.